Here is an improved and polished version of Chapter 233, continuing seamlessly from Chapter 232. Style and tone. Marine narrowed her eyes. The child was sitting very still across from her, hat reinstated, macaron untouched, radiating the specific quality of stillness that she associated with someone who had decided the best strategy was to become furniture. She knew that stillness. She had been watching it across dinner tables for 2 years. "Do you know," she said, conversationally, to the middle distance, "a man named Paradat?" The child said nothing. Which was, itself, an answer. A stranger would have said no. A child would have said who. The careful, practiced silence of someone who had decided that any response was a liability, that was something else entirely. Olive appeared at the garden's edge a moment later, walking at a pace that was almost but not quite hurrying. When he saw the child, he stopped. Then he looked at Marine. Then he looked somewhere else entirely, with the focused intensity of a man reading a fascinating wall. Marine looked between them. "Olive," she said pleasantly. "Do you know this child?" "No," Olive said, immediately and with great conviction. "Never seen him in my life." The child stood up and took hold of Olive's hand. "Ah," Olive said, changing course with the smoothness of someone who had practiced this, "actually, now that I look closely, it's a child I know. I'll just take him with me. Along. Away from here." "Of course," Marine said. She watched them go. Olive walking with careful dignity. The child beside him, hat pulled down, hand firmly in Olive's, moving with a purposeful stride that was rather short but no less purposeful for that. She waited until they had nearly reached the garden door. Then she made a sound, a sharp, alarmed sound, and let herself drop sideways against the bench. The footsteps stopped. Then, very fast, a small pair of feet crossing the garden at something close to a run. "Are you all right?" The voice was familiar. It was always going to be familiar. She had been listening to it long enough to recognize it at any register, in any key, even soft and high and nothing like itself. Marine looked up. The hat had gone again, this time sacrificed to speed, and she was looking at a face she already knew, younger and rounder but arranged in exactly the same expression it always wore when it was trying very hard not to show that it was worried. She burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. The laughter came up without permission, bright and helpless, and she pressed a hand over her mouth and laughed anyway. "Mr. Gerard," she managed. "No," he said. "Isn't it?" "I am not." She pulled him into her arms before he could finish the sentence. He fit entirely, which was extraordinary. He fit the way she had always absently imagined a child of theirs might fit, small and solid and warm, and she held him with both arms and felt him go rigid with the effort of maintaining any dignity whatsoever. "I won't let go," she said, "until you tell me the truth." A long silence. "It's me," he said, in a voice of great suffering. "I knew it." She pressed her cheek to the top of his head. His hair smelled the same. "You were so small. You're so cute." Marine. Very dark. Very quiet. Just a little longer. She pulled him closer. He fit so completely against her that it made something ache, softly. "You fit so perfectly. You've always been exactly the right size." "I am not the right size. I am the wrong size. Jerome will be correcting this tonight, and then he will be finding new employment." Just for a moment more. He went still. Not the stiff, resistant stillness of before, something quieter. He exhaled once, slowly, and the tension went out of him by degrees, like a door easing shut. "Fine," he said, in a voice so small it was nearly lost. "Do as you like." Marine smiled into his hair and held her husband in the afternoon light and did not say anything else, because there was nothing else to say. Some moments were complete on their own. The road to the capital was long enough that stopping felt less like a delay than a restoration. The driver had unhitched the horses to let them drink from the stream, and the afternoon had settled into the particular quiet of a journey at rest. Marine stepped down from the carriage and found her father sitting cross-legged in the grass. She moved toward him the way she always had, without thinking, the way water moves toward low ground. She sat beside him and rested her head on his shoulder. He was warm and solid, and she felt herself breathe out, fully, for the first time in some time. "You've gotten heavy, Kenzie," he said. "Don't lie." "Ha. You're right, I'm lying." He laughed, that laugh, the one that had never changed, that had always sounded like it was enjoying its own joke even when no one else was, and Marine laughed with him, without quite knowing what she was laughing at. She looked where he was looking. A black stone sat in the grass at his feet. Something about it nagged at her, a sense of having seen it before, somewhere, the shape of it familiar in the way of things encountered and then forgotten. "What are you looking at?" "That stone," she said. "I feel like I've seen it before." Her father smiled and lifted a small watering can that had not been there a moment ago. He began to water the stone with the focused attention of someone engaged in very important work. "Why," Marine said carefully, "are you watering a stone?" "It grants wishes," he said, without looking up. There was a line of sweat at his temple, as though he had been doing this for a long time. "It's granted mine, many times over." Marine looked at his face. He had not aged. She had not noticed it until now, the familiar shape of him so expected that she had simply accepted it, but he was exactly as she had always remembered him, from some particular afternoon of her childhood that she could not name. No older. No different. "What did you wish for?" she asked. He picked up the stone carefully and turned to her, and placed it in her hands. A crack ran across its surface. From the crack, green. A small thing, impossibly small, with 2 leaves and a stem and the tentative conviction of something that has just decided to exist. Her father rose to his feet and raised both arms, laughing like a man who had been waiting a very long time for this. "You did it," he said. "It worked." "What worked?" Her voice came out soft. "What was your wish?" He looked at her the way he always had, the particular look, the one that had always made her feel like the most important thing in whatever room she was in. "My wish," he said, "is that whatever Kenzie wishes for will always come true." The edges of him were going. She could see it happening, the brightness of him, the warmth, beginning to recede like light through a closing door. "Dad." Her eyes were filling. She tried to blink it back. "Thank you. For saving me. For keeping me. For, Marine." The voice was soft and immediate and real, and she opened her eyes. The garden. Afternoon light. A book on the ground beside the bench, pages bent where it had fallen. Gerard was crouching in front of her, looking at her the way he looked at things he was worried about, quietly, without performance, with all his attention. "Oh," she said. "Mr. Gerard." He produced a handkerchief. She looked at its considerable size. "It's rather large," she said. "It's practical." He folded it once and dried her face with it, careful, and then sat beside her on the bench. He picked up the book from the ground and placed it on the table without comment. Marine became aware of something in her hand. She looked down. The stone. The black stone from the dream, she'd been using it to prop the book open while she read. She turned it over, slow, feeling the weight of it. Her father had never told her what his wishes were, while he was alive. She had always assumed they were the ordinary things, health, prosperity, enough. It hadn't occurred to her to think he might have spent them on her. "I'm so sleepy lately," she said, to the stone, to Gerard, to no one in particular. "That's not a problem," Gerard said. "Sleeping is appropriate." She smiled without looking at him. Leaned sideways against his shoulder, then further, until her cheek was against his chest. He was warm. His heartbeat was steady and a little fast, the way it always was when she was close, which he had stopped pretending she wasn't supposed to notice. Your own pillow, she said. Reliable. Should I do more chest exercises? No. If you get any bigger you'll be larger than me. You are the elder, he said, very quietly, right beside her ear. She pulled back and covered her face. Mr. Gerard, I've decided to always be honest with you, he said, with complete seriousness. This does require, occasionally, becoming very direct. Direct, she repeated, and laughed, and turned back into his shoulder because there was nowhere else she'd rather be. He put his arm around her. The afternoon was quiet. Somewhere in the garden, something was blooming, she could smell it, faintly, green and soft. You didn't ask me why I was crying, she said, after a while. No. Because you knew I'd tell you. Because you always do. She held the stone a little tighter. I dreamed about my father. I hadn't seen him in so long. She paused. He looked the same as he always did. And he was so happy. Gerard said nothing, but his hand moved to the back of her head and rested there, gentle and steady. She closed her eyes. She didn't know. But the afternoon was warm and her husband's heartbeat was even, and she thought, not for the first time, not for the last, that the people who loved you left more behind than they ever knew.